Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott and I'm the Emperor of Stomaria. Today we're reviewing the Imperial Summit 2024. So over the weekend, we hosted the Imperial Summit 2024. Now, for those that don't know, the Imperial Summit is an annual event that is hosted by Stomaria, in which the citizens and supporters of Stomaria and the member states of the wider empire can come together in order to build closer ties with one another. And we do this through feasting, through competitions, through workshops, through stalls and markets, and various other family-friendly activities. As I say, to try to build those bridges with one another and really try to forge a sense of community and a sense of identity. And it is an opportunity for all of us to celebrate our accomplishments, to review the past year and see what we have done and what our plans are for the future. Now, last year we held the Imperial Summit 2023, which was the first ever Imperial Summit, in Southwood and Wayward South, which are two adjoining provinces of the Empire. And this year was no different. And the reason for that is twofold. First, the Imperial Summit, as is going to be the case for all Imperial Summits in the future, will always be held on territory of the Empire. So we won't be renting out halls or going to hotels or whatever else. It has to be territory of the Empire, which really re-emphasizes the mission that we are on, the vision that we have for the future. But it is also an opportunity, in this instance, to showcase what we have been doing at Southwood and Wayward South since last year. Many of the attendees would have not have seen these woodland territories since last year. Some might have seen it intermittently, every couple of months or something to that effect, but the land, the territory, these provinces have changed quite drastically over the course of the last year, and it was a good opportunity just to bring people together there and highlight just what we have done. But the Imperial Summit this year was very last minute. It was quite rushed because there was some question as to whether or not we were actually going to host an Imperial Summit this year. And the reason for that isn't because we didn't want it to be an annual event, because we absolutely did. But the issue is, over the course of this year, we are working quite tirelessly, I think is fair to say, in order to raise enough capital to begin the next round of territorial purchases next year. That is to say, both Stomaria and Wayward in particular, and I'm sure Vesta is doing much the same, we are trying to raise enough revenue, enough capital, enough cash to buy the next set of provinces. And that is going to be something that we are really striving for the remainder of this year going into next year. And there was some questions to whether or not the Imperial Summit was going to hamper that in some way, because the Imperial Summit is a free event. It comes out of our own pockets, that is to say the pockets of the Imperial family. There aren't any financial contributions to attend. The food is free, the activities are free and all the rest of it. But it does come out of the pocket of the Imperial family. And the Imperial family is obviously the entity that is going to be purchasing the next round of provinces for Stomaria in particular. Obviously you have King Raoul of Wayward and Consul David of Vesta, each looking to raise their own capital to buy their own provinces, but these are all provinces of the Empire. But that is all to say, there was some question as to whether or not it was going to be a good idea to have the Imperial Summit this year, because it would impede in some way our ability to raise that additional capital, not just because of the purchase of the food, toilet tent, archery equipment, bin liners, toiletries, drinks, and all that sort of thing. Even things like straw bales for the archery range. But there was also a lot of time and money invested into preparing these provinces to bring them up to standard so that we could actually host an event there. Because it was being hosted at the end of May rather than in mid-June, which is where we held the summit last year, there was a bit of a concern, especially with the recent weather being as it is, that it was going to be quite wet or had the potential to rain during the summit, which fortunately it didn't, but there was always some concern about that. And because it is a woodland territory, the provinces, Southwood and Wayward South, are both woodland provinces. And it's, as you say, it'll be mud in the woodland. And so we spent a lot of time trying to prepare a large part of the woodland to make it suitable for the attendees in case it did rain. So there was a large amount of gravel path and gravel access, which cost a small fortune to actually prepare. Alongside that, we a few months ago started spreading clover seed so that there would be a lawn of sorts for people to be able to walk on. And that, again, is something that did cost a lot of money and time and energy to actually prepare. There was a lot of work into preparing the land, more so than you would think. I mean, you think back when the last Imperial Summit in 2023 happened, and even then we just weren't ready. There was still a lot of work to be done, and there is still a lot of work to be done in terms of clearing out the woodland. But that is all to say, it cost a lot of money to actually prepare the woodland and to host the event. So there was some question mark as to whether or not that was going to happen. And the reason that we did end up doing it is because my OCD wouldn't have tolerated a gap in the record, in the sense that we had the Imperial Summit 2023, nothing 24, but then we had it in 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and all the rest of it. And it just wouldn't sit right with me. So even though that it was very last minute, quite rushed and quite expensive to set up, we did have the Imperial Summit. However, in hindsight, for reasons I'll get to in a little bit, it was probably a mistake to do so, because it wasn't as grand an affair. It wasn't as spectacular as it could have been. And part of that is down to time, but also the approach that we took when it came to getting people to attend the event itself. And it was very clear right from the outset that attendance was going to be less than what we had last year. And that's because a lot of the regulars, the diehards, the core of both Stomaria and Wayward were not going to be able to attend. There were a handful of people that we were expecting to be there, but they just weren't going to be able to make it. And we knew that right from the start. And so there was a question as to how many would actually attend in the end. And we went from around about the same number of attendees that were planning to attend as last year. But from my own experience, that doesn't mean anything. In fact, as a general rule, if 20 people say they're going to attend, count on 10 of those people actually showing up on the day. And that's basically what happened. We had a sizable number of people saying they were going to attend, but in the end, I think we had potentially 8 or 9 dropouts, about 4 of which were actually virtually on the day of the summit itself. Even King Raoul of Wayward was unable to attend the Imperial Summit because of work commitments. And so there was an issue in terms of the attendance. And there was a lot of faffing around as well in terms of whether or not some of the facilities and some of the events that we wanted to do at the Imperial Summit, whether or not those facilities and those events would actually be able to take place. And we didn't know right until the actual summit itself whether or not we were going to be able to do some of what we had planned. And that was very frustrating for me and for a lot of others that were involved in this, because I am someone that likes to have their ducks in a row. I like to have everything organized, streamlined, well in advance. I know exactly what's going to happen. I don't like surprises. I don't like hiccups. We can get around them, and we always do, but it is incredibly frustrating when things can't progress as smoothly as I would like. And there was at one point where I was quite prepared just to cancel the Imperial Summit in its entirety, because I was getting so fed up with people dropping out, with, as I say, some of the facilities and events. Maybe we wouldn't be able to do them, maybe we would, we didn't know. And it was getting so frustrating for me personally that on the lead up to the event, unlike last year where I was genuinely quite excited about everything falling into place and looking forward to the event itself, this year it was more of a case of I can't wait to get this over with, because it was becoming so frustrating for me for months, in terms of just the amount of work that I had to physically do in trying to get the woodland ready, in terms of trying to get people to confirm whether or not they were going to come, in terms of, as I say, just preparing everything for this summit. We did, as I say, eventually hold it, but there was some battle. It was an uphill battle to actually pull this one off. But as I say, we did eventually host the Imperial Summit. We did get there in the end. And once I was actually there, once everything was set up, I did start to enjoy myself a little bit more. It was quite frustrating over the course of the first day, which was the Friday, which is typically the arrival day, when it became apparent that even of the people that said they were going to attend, right up until that point, we had another 3 or 4 dropouts, and that was quite frustrating. But for those that did attend, I did enjoy their company, and it was good to be able to, have that experience with those individuals. And we did, in fact, get a new face showing up as well, which was quite nice. It's always nice to be able to introduce people to what we are doing. And that is largely the name of the game here. It's about, as I say, building bridges with one another and introducing people in a more real, physical sense as to what we are trying to build here. Now, for the event itself, we started off quite well in the sense that we had a catering trailer, which Wayward had actually purchased a little while ago, and it was utilised quite efficiently. It was good to have the space, the facilities to actually store the food, to prepare the food, and to actually cook the food. And we actually had full English breakfast and all the rest of it for the attendees that wanted them, and breakfast bats for those that wanted something a little lighter. Then we had obviously the feast itself, which is obviously a large spread, something we did last year, and quite an enduring feature of the Imperial Summit, where it's a very clear representation of people literally coming together to break bread, and that again is what it's all about. We also had competitions, so we had the archery competition, which I'm very proud to say that Empress Samantha actually won, but because the members of the Imperial family aren't actually allowed to win the prizes that we give out for the winners of the archery and the air rifle competitions, the prize did go to the runner-up, which was Vic. And just while I think about it, I would like to thank, in particular, Scott and Vic for their very, very hard work. They really made the summit possible. I wasn't able to do everything I wanted to do. I didn't want to have to cook every meal. I didn't want to have to set up all of the facilities and everything. And other people obviously were involved in helping to prepare the woodland and assisted during the day. But I would like to give a special shout out to Scott and Vic, because they were instrumental in making this happen. But to get things on track a little bit more, so Vic actually was the runner-up. She came second in the archery competition, and so she won the prize, which was a silver Stomarian stater coin, a 5 stater coin, so it would be 5 grams of pure silver. She had the opportunity to double up, and the reason that the way that this works, you see, is that the winner of the archery competition or the air rifle competition, once they actually win, they have the opportunity to challenge me one-on-one. Not because I don't have an immense skill or whatever else when it comes to archery or air rifle competitions. It's just a bit of fun. And so I don't actually participate in this unless they decide to take me up on the offer. And if they beat me, then they can get double the prize. But if they lose, then they don't get any prize at all. So there's a little bit of that. But Vic actually decided to walk away, took the prize money, and left it at that. With the air rifle competition, just like last year, Scott actually won the air rifle competition. And he wasn't afraid to challenge me to double up the prize money. And from memory, he got 16 points with the air rifle against me, and I got 14. So it was closer than it should have been, I think. But he did pull ahead, and he did win twice as much silver. So he won 2 silver stater coins at 5 grams. So 10 grams of pure silver found its way into his pocket. But I also paid Vic and Scott in silver staters for their services for the Imperial Summit itself. So Scott actually went out to go purchase some goods for me, and he was, as I say, quite instrumental in doing a lot of the work, a lot of the maintenance, helping to set up the bouncy castle, which we'll get onto in a minute, helping to prepare the food, and cleaning up quite intently. So between himself and Vic, who was assisting Scott with this, they also got, I think it was 200 silver staters from memory. So that is to say that would be 4 of the 50 stater bars, so 50 grams per bar, 200 staters. I'm pretty sure, I think I parted with 200 staters as a thanks for their services during the Imperial Summit itself. Now, what I mentioned a second ago was the bouncy castle, because we did actually have a bouncy castle this year. Because, as I say, Wayward, they not only bought a catering trailer, but I think Scott, who's a Waywoodian, I think he purchased by himself, from memory, I might be wrong on that, but either he or Wayward had purchased a bouncy castle, and he kindly set that up just in time for little Princess Eleanor to arrive at the Imperial Summit. A few adults did go on it as well, but it was definitely a favourite of Princess Eleanor on the day. She was quite insistent on trying to get everyone on, but the adults were a bit shattered or broken in some form, so she had to make do with only a few adults for short periods of time. I unfortunately did have to get dragged on to the bouncy castle against my wishes, and I did manage to stay on there for a little while with Princess Eleanor. But it was Empress Samantha, unfortunately, who had to bear the brunt of the bouncy castle with Princess Eleanor, because unfortunately, there weren't any children there this year. So little Princess Eleanor was just, largely playing by herself. As I say, last year was a lot grander. We did have more children there. I think there was was it 2 or 3 more children off the top of my head? So she had someone to run around with and play with, but she didn't have that this year, which was unfortunate. But she had the bouncy castle. And she also had a little bow and arrow as well, so she managed to do a bit of practicing with that. So that was quite nice to see as well, because, as I say, trying to get Eleanor to be more hands-on when it comes to the community at large that we're trying to build is very important to me, and that kind of ties into it. So the competition side of things to one side and the food to one side, what we would normally do and what we had last year was like stalls, little market stall where people could have a look at some of the wares and buy and sell and whatever else. Last year I did actually buy a few bits, or Samantha bought a few bits, utilising the silver staters, as we try to do as much as possible. But this year, because attendance was so low, there was only one stall out, very, very briefly, very, very small. It was only for a few hours. I think a few bits were sold there, but it was nothing major. And again, this is a disappointment for me, because I want it to be bigger. I want it to be more significant. I want more people to attend. I want more market stalls. I want more people involved in the feasting, more people involved in the actual competitions. I just want what we have, but more of it, because it gives a better a feeling across what we're trying to do, because this isn't just about hanging around in the woods. This is about nation building. It's about community building. And something that I do regret doing is not having something more formal during some part of the event, because, as I say, last year, which we should have learned a lot more lessons from, I should think, we did have a short period, probably less than an hour, in which we gave speeches, in which we thanked particular people through knighthoods, or appointing them as lords or ladies of Stomaria or Wayward, or giving them tokens of thanks of some sort. We had like a ceremony of sorts, and we really didn't have any of that this year. And a large part of that is because I thought once while I was at the Woodland, I just wanted to relax. I didn't want to have to worry about the pomp and ceremony of it necessarily. I just wanted to enjoy myself and not have to worry about anything else. But also because the attendance was so low, it seemed hardly worth doing in the first place. But I think having that really does sort of refocus our attention as to why we're there. This isn't just a barbecue in the woods. This isn't just a bouncy castle in the woods. This isn't just a little competition in the woods. This is about nation building. And I think having that formality, even just for a small part of the day, really refocuses the attention on that. And that is something that we are going to have a look at going forward. So with all of that said, there are a few lessons that I wanted to pull away from this Imperial Summit in preparation for next year to make sure that the Imperial Summit 2025 is far more successful. The first thing we need to make sure that we do is that we need to make sure that we plan well in advance. We're talking somewhere between 4, 5, maybe even 6 months in advance, and to have a dialogue with the regular attendees of these sorts of events, people that we can trust to show up on the day if they say they're going to show up, to ascertain as to what the best date is going to be. Because as I say, we chose a date relatively arbitrary, and a lot of people just couldn't attend. Now, the reason we actually did choose this date in the end is because it was supposed to be an event in which Wayward were going to have their 5-year anniversary being celebrated. But for reasons I'm not going to get into here, that idea was shelved. And so instead, we decided that we would just have the Imperial Summit on that particular weekend instead. Whereas normally what I would do is I would have it around the anniversary of Stomaria itself, or a little later into June, just to make sure that the weather was going to be more forgiving, or has the potential to be more forgiving. So having that conversation very early on is going to be very important, so people can book the time off work, so people can plan in advance, not have anything on that weekend or whatever else, just to make sure that we have that dialogue first and foremost. The second thing that we're going to do is reintroduce what we did last year with attendees. So what we did last year is we had a refundable deposit system. So what we did is we said that if someone wanted to attend, they had to confirm their attendance by sending us, I think it was £15, and they would get that back if they showed up on the day. And the reason that we had this system in place isn't because we weren't interested in taking people's money. As I say, it's a free event. But what it does do is it discourages people from saying that they're going to attend, even if they're not 100% sure that they are. And so all of the extra time and effort and money that goes into preparing the Imperial Summit, with the expectation we're going to get X amount of people, if people do, drop out and we can retain the deposit, it's not a case of we bought X amount of food, but only half the amount of people showed up, so it's a complete waste of money. It's a case of if they don't show up, then the money will cover those losses effectively. So that's the reason we had that in place. And because we had that in place, we did end up having a few dropouts, but that funds that they contributed beforehand, the deposits, helped to cover and make up for the loss that we endured because those people weren't there to take advantage of what we had prepared. But it also meant we did have far fewer dropouts. When people said they were going to attend and they sent the deposit, we had far fewer dropouts than we did this year, whereas we didn't have anything this year. We just said, do you want to show up? And they said yes, and then we provided them details. They said great, and then they didn't show up on the day. So we're going to reintroduce that as a means of dissuading people, as I say, from saying they're going to attend if they have no intention of actually doing so, or something comes up for whatever reason. But it's also a way of just covering ourselves so we don't waste money unduly. The third thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that things are slightly more formal during some parts of the day. As I said earlier, I need to refocus what we're doing. We're not just hanging out in the woods, we are actually trying to build something, a nation, an empire, a real sense of community, and we can't do that unless we have some level of pomp and ceremony to it, just for a small portion of the day, just to make sure that everyone knows exactly why they are here, rather than just people, moving around, chatting with each other, having competitions, having a laugh, sitting by the campfire, whatever else, which is all absolutely fantastic. That's exactly what I want, but we need to remember why we are doing this. It's not just a jolly in the woods. The fourth thing that I want to do is I want to have someone dedicated to taking the video and photo footage of the actual summit itself. I don't want it to be down entirely to me or to other people there, because, as is probably quite obvious from this particular video, we didn't get a lot of footage of the Imperial Summit, because there was no one dedicated to actually taking that footage. And if I was taking that footage, I'm out of the moment. I want to be there, as I say, to enjoy the experience, and I can't do that if I'm constantly having to whip out my phone every time something happens. And it was quite distracting for me and very off-putting for me, because every time something did happen, then I would be in the moment and I would enjoy it, but then I'd forget to actually take any footage of it, so people wouldn't be able to experience that when they're watching back on this and they were here. And you might say, it's better that you just live in the moment, all the rest of it. And I agree, and that's what I want to do, but I do need someone to record this for prosperity, because there are a lot of people that watch our channel, Keep Up with Stomaria, but can't attend these events for whatever reason, and they would like to, feel like they're a part of that, and having that kind of footage is important. So I think next year we will have someone that is dedicated to, taking footage of the event itself, so as to make sure that there is something for everyone. And lastly, we do need to cut back on the food. We just had too much food. Even if we didn't have the smaller attendance that we did, even if we maxed out what we were expecting to have, it was still too much food. Because we had allowed for, I think it was 2 breakfasts, 2 smaller lunches, 1 feast, and then 2 dinners, which were barbecues. But by the time we had the barbecue on the Friday evening and the full English breakfast on the Saturday morning, which was quite late in the day, because people were getting up slightly later than expected. By the time we got to that point, people were fooded out. They were full. They weren't hungry anymore, and that was a concern, because we had prepared this massive spread for the feast, and not only did we have nearly half as many attendees as we were expecting, but no one was hungry, and that was a big problem. So we are going to severely cut back on the food, because again, lessons should have been learned. We didn't have this issue last year because we didn't have so many barbecues and breakfasts and all the rest of it. I think we had 1 barbecue or maybe 2 barbecues, and then the feast. We didn't have any breakfasts, and we didn't have any like major lunches or anything like that. So it was a case of it ran a bit more smoothly on that front. People were actually wanting to join the feast and actually indulge in the feast and enjoy themselves. But we had to push back the feast until about 3:30 in the afternoon, which is supposed to be a lunchtime thing, because people were just so full. And it did eventually, most of it get eaten, but the following breakfast on the Sunday morning and the barbecue on the Saturday evening, that was cancelled. And so we ended up with huge amounts of food left over. Some of it never even left my freezer, and a lot of it had to be either taken away back by me or by other attendees, or some of it, if it was no good for us, would be fed to some of the dogs. So we really have to cut back on the food, and that will obviously save a lot of time and money. And likewise with like the toiletries and the drinks and everything, I always overestimate how much is going to be consumed. So I really need to sort of reevaluate that aspect of it to make sure that the Imperial Summit next year is a lot more cost effective. Now, for the Imperial Summit next year, we will hopefully have learned all of these sorts of lessons, and we will hopefully be able to build something far more significant in terms of having it more streamlined, having attendance on the up, having the costs cut down, having some more professional footage taken, and all the rest of it. However, all being well, we may not even have the Imperial Summit at Southwood and Wayward South next year. It still will be as a default as of this moment in time, but if things go the way we want them to, if we are able to push forward, then we will hopefully have new provinces that we can potentially utilise for the next Imperial Summit. And that is something that we are going to be working towards. Because always remember that what we are doing here in Stomaria and in the wide empire is we are building a nation. We are building an empire, and we are spreading as fast as we can across the British Isles and beyond. If you want to show your support for Stomaria or play an active role in our development and expansion, you can join as a citizen through the links below. Otherwise, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to our YouTube channel. We'll catch you in the next one.